What's up guys, welcome to the channel. So we're out taking a drive today, and I've had some questions on some of my videos about people kind of asking about ESS versus Whipple, or I guess more generically a positive displacement supercharger versus a centrifugal supercharger. So really what I just kind of want to talk to you guys about my pros and cons for each one of those, and just what are my thoughts about them. And I think from here on out, I'm just going to say Whipple versus ESS, because those are kind of the two main brands people go with. If you're going positive displacement, you're probably doing the Whipple. I know there's a VMP out there, and I think a couple others, but we'll just say Whipple. And then ESS is a really, really good one that people go if they're looking to do a centrifugal setup. So I'm just going to say Whipple or ESS. So yeah, really just want to talk to you guys about kind of my thoughts between an ESS versus a Whipple on a Coyote engine. So when I was doing research on these though, what I was finding is there's a lot of videos that definitely show you kind of the inner workings and how they make power, but they don't really give you a lot of information on application or where is the best to use these kinds of things. So I wanted to do a video on that that's just kind of more, you know, application based rather than technical details for them. And we're out driving, so we'll just have like a, you know, a low-key discussion with you guys. So to me, a Whipple certainly has its advantages. So with a Whipple, you get the power immediately. So there's not really any boost buildup. Now, it is true that as you increase your RPMs, the Whipples do make more boost, but it happens really, really quick. Whereas in an ESS setup, you really only make your boost on the top end. So with a Whipple, you do get that immediate snap of power and that immediate kick back into your seat. And I think that makes Whipples really, really fun. So when I was first looking to, it's kind of like, why, I was thinking, why would you go with the ESS? You can kind of make similar power with either one, right? With either setup. Like, you can push both a Whipple or an ESS. I've seen people make up to 1,200 horsepower. Now, obviously, you're doing a fuel system, injectors, and things like that. Obviously, different pulleys and everything. But I always was like, well, why would you go with an ESS? Whipple just seems the better route always. Is you make the same power, but you're making it on a much flatter torque curve, and you get a far more consistent power delivery. And then after doing some research and kind of digging into this, I kind of found that's definitely not the case. Technically it is, but ESSs have extreme advantages over a Whipple. So with an ESS, when you make your power up high in the RPMs, you definitely have an advantage to traction. So if I'm doing a roll race, coming off from a hit like at 40 miles an hour, 6 miles an hour, it's pretty easy to break the tires loose, and that's not conducive to winning a roll race. Where with an ESS, there's a huge advantage because you're not immediately making that power. You have to get really high in the RPMs to be on full boost. That initial delivery of it is a little bit softer of a hit, but you're not breaking traction. You're giving the wheels time to actually make grip before the boost starts rolling on really hard with the ESS. And this is even more exacerbated when you're coming from a dig, especially from a dig. So with a Whipple, you have that immediate onset of torque as soon as you come off the line. And it's really hard to launch, especially if you're coming with a manual transmission. And I'll get more into manual transmissions versus, the 10R80s with a Whipple or ESS. But with the ESS, there is that delay in boost or like max power that is super conducive to traction. So it's much, much easier. Generally, it's much easier to come off the line with an ESS than with a Whipple. And I can definitely speak truth to that, because launching this car from a dig, and just so you guys know, this is a Whipple 2025 Mustang GT. Launching this car from a dig is very, very difficult. Like, you just have extreme wheel spin and you're just fighting for grip. So with an ESS, there's a huge advantage to that. And the more I kind of dig into this, is the more I saw ESSs being used for people who are actually racing. Now, also too, when it comes to manual transmissions versus automatics, or the MT82 versus the 10R80, ESSs definitely have their advantage there too. Where if you ESS a 6-speed, what I have seen and what I have been reading online is there is, I don't want to say issue, but there are some people that report that when you shift, like say you're shifting from 2nd gear to 3rd gear, or 3rd gear to 4th gear, that RPM drop is dropping you so far out of like max power band. Now you're still in the power band, right? Your RPMs aren't dropping that far, but you are losing boost in that gear shift, a meaningful amount of boost that you have to rebuild back in the RPMs on your next gear. Now with a 10R80, that's not so much the case, just because you have more gears, they're much more stacked together, where a upshift doesn't really drop your RPMs all that much, certainly not compared to an MT82 car. So this is where ESSs also have a really nice advantage, where in a 10R80, you're not really shifting so far out of the power band. Now again, like I said, with the MT82, you're not, you know, I think it's probably, if I had to guess, I could be totally wrong, but it's probably about 1,000 RPMs drop, generally speaking, when you upshift. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. And that's not going to take you completely out of the power band on an ESS, but it could take you out of max power. And I have seen some reports of people documenting that with their ESS setups on an MT82 car. And again, with a 10R80, just again, because the gears are so much closer together because you have more of them, that's not so much the case. And that can be an advantage with a 10R80, is with the gear shifting, you have, specifically with a 10R80 and an ESS, you have the advantage of not making all of your boost on launch or on hit with the roll race, but you, but when you shift, when you upshift, you're not dropping your RPM so far that you're losing any meaningful boost to make the same kind of peak power. So that's another advantage with ESSs. With Whipples, it's not so much the case, right? Because you do, you know, anything after 4,000 RPMs, you're making really good boost, and the power and the torque curve is pretty flat. It's pretty plateaued, you know, relative to an ESS setup. So I think when it comes to racing, I think ESSs generally have an advantage to that. Now with Whipples, I think they're just more fun. Like, just straight up, I think they are just a more fun car to drive and to enjoy on the street, because you have that immediate pulling power, that immediate passing power. Downshifting multiple gears isn't really necessary to pass a car on a highway. You just have that immediate torque delivery. And I think generally that just kind of makes it more fun, just for general street driving. So there's definitely an advantage to there in terms of just a fun factor. I think the Whipple kind of takes the cake with that. Now, obviously, a supercharged Mustang is going to be extremely fun. So not to say that an ESS is less fun by any means. And this is definitely a more personal preference thing. You know, there's some people that like to fight a little bit to get their RPMs up to start making power. And I've driven turbo cars in the past, and that's definitely true. So to some people, an ESS could be more fun just because you have to fight, or you have to work a little bit to make your power in the high RPMs. To me, I think the Whipple is just more fun though, because like I said, just like low RPMs, you just immediately have that torque. You don't really have to work for it. It just gives it to you automatically. And also too, sometimes you don't want to wind your engine all the way out. Like if you're in a neighborhood-ish kind of area, that's kind of nice to just have some immediate torque delivery rather than really stretching your RPMs closer to red line to get that power. So again, for me, a Whipple I think generally is just going to be more fun, and that seems to be the consensus for a lot of people when you kind of read, you know, preference-based opinions on ESS or Whipple online. People generally find the Whipples a little bit more fun. Now, when it comes to cost, ESS is pretty much flat out going to be better here. Whipples generally, you know, people are always offering really good deals on them, but with tax, you're definitely paying, you know, expect to pay $10,000 or more for the entire Whipple kit. With the ESS though, I mean, I've seen them for like $6,500, $7,000, and that's a pretty meaningful difference in price. You know, $7,000 versus $10,000, that's a lot. $3,000 is a lot of money to save. And we all know it, car parts are expensive, okay? They just are. That's just how it is, right? It's the name of the game. If you're into building cars and stuff like that, it's just expensive. So when you can spend $3,000 less and get an identical quality of setup, that can be a pretty easy choice if you don't have a strong preference towards ESS or Whipple. So definitely advantaged ESS kits on that one. Now, also too with ESSs that have an advantage is generally the install is a bit easier than Whipples. Now, Whipples, and this is more specific to Whipples, at least my understanding, but I can definitely tell you instructions for a Whipple are crystal clear. They are very, very well thought out. There's pictures for every step, great descriptions. So, not saying that installing a Whipple is maybe more, maybe in particular more difficult, but it's definitely more time involving. It's just like generally going to be a more involved process than installing a ESS. ESSs definitely do have an ease of install when compared to Whipples, just overall. So, you know, if it's kind of like your first time doing something like this, a big project on your car, there's an advantage to ESSs. They are generally known to be a bit easier to install than a Whipple. So hopefully that kind of helps you guys on my thoughts versus, you know, a Whipple versus the ESS. So overall, if you guys are looking to do some serious racing, right, to make the best times, the best 1/8 mile, the best 1/4 mile, best 60 foot, maybe 6130, even in roll races, if being as fast as you can is the biggest priority, one, you guys probably went with a 10R80 Mustang, as 10R80s, they're simply just faster than MT82s. But if that's what you guys are seriously interested in, I think an ESS is definitely going to be the route for you. So like I said, you probably want the 10R80 because they're faster, and an ESS is going to be more conducive to going fast just because you have better traction mechanics on launch because you don't have full boost or full power, you know, necessarily relative to a Whipple. So in any kind of street racing or drag racing or roll racing, an ESS generally is going to have the advantage. Now, if you're more into just fun, you want to enjoy the car and still go really fast, that's where, one, you may have picked the MT82 in that case, because manuals, at least to me, I know people don't really buy manual Mustangs anymore, but at least to me, manual Mustangs are just more fun. And if you're just looking to have that kind of fun, then a Whipple's probably going to be a better choice, just because they're more usable in terms of pulling power and passing power, and generally, at least to me, certainly in my opinion, I think they are a lot of fun and probably more fun than an ESS where you really have to build boost. Because with the ESS, if you're below 4,000 or even 5,000 RPMs, it's going to feel relatively very much like an NA Coyote. So, you know, it's going to feel relatively close to stock until you're, you know, above 4,000 or 5,000 RPMs with the ESS. And even in some cases, 6,000 RPMs. Now with a Whipple, it feels crazy fast no matter where you are in the rev range, whatever gear you're in. So hopefully that helps. I guess actually one more thing too that I do actually really like about ESSs is that with the utilization of a blow-off valve, God, they sound so good. Just go on YouTube, look for, you know, POV driving videos of ESS setups with the blow-off valve. The first one that immediately comes to mind is Derek Barron Productions channel with Lucifer. He has well, I think he actually has a Paxton, but same thing, Centrifugal Supercharger with a blow-off valve, and it sounds so cool. All the whistling noises, it's very much turbo sounding, which is pretty awesome. Where with the Whipple though, they don't really whine. I mean, there's the Foster's whine mod, which I'm thinking about doing, just to get some more whine in the cabin for the Supercharger, but they really don't produce much or any of a whine noise, which I guess to some they like, some they don't, but you know, it's all kind of personal preference there. I kind of like noises. I love when cars talk to me, but in a good way. So yeah, that's kind of everything about my thoughts with a Whipple or a positive displacement supercharger versus a ESS or a centrifugal supercharger. So hopefully that kind of helps you guys out. again, just quick recap. If you're really looking at racing and going fast and putting down the best numbers you can, ESS is probably the route you want to go. If you're looking for just the most maximum amount of fun that you can have, probably Whipple. And again, if you're balling on a budget and you're trying to be the most cost effective you can be, ESS. If that's not so much a priority, probably Whipple in that case, given that the other ones line up for your kind of goals and desires for the car. So hopefully that kind of helps you guys. I appreciate you guys tuning into this video. I'm on my way to In-N-Out. Can't wait to eat my Saturday lunch. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.